What is going on, everybody? So I am back today to talk about something because I saw a tweet recently, and I'm going to put it up on screen for you right now, where this person tweeted and said, "Masters of modern horror, I think so." And there's four pictures up on the screen, as you can see. Those pictures are of Zack Kger, Oz Perkins, Jordan Peele, and Robert Eggers. And of course, this person is saying that he believes that these are the trailblazers of modern horror movies, people that are sort of setting the precedent for how the medium is going to be moving forward. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about these guys a little bit today, and for me to kind of give my perspective of how I feel about them and like the way that they're sort of influencing horror in the modern age, and then also talk about some people that aren't on this list that I think are equally as influential and doing really great work as well. And I'm excited to dive into this with you today. So, what I'm going to do when I dive into this, right now we're going to cover the four people that are on this little four grid, and then I'm going to talk about some other directors after that. So the first one up on this list is Zack Kger, which if you watched my video recently, I praised Weapons very heavily. I thought that it was an incredibly well-made movie that showcases Kregger's talent as a director. Do I think he is a master of modern horror? Not necessarily, but I think that he has a lot of potential. I think he's a very talented director, and I think he is pulling from a lot of influences that we are very familiar with. But I do think his progression as a director with the two films that we have readily available is already being shown. Barbarian was wildly entertaining, and I feel like what really hinged on the experience of Barbarian was the very jarring sort of reveal of information early on in that movie, and kind of, the build up at the end. It became incredibly violent and suspenseful. There was also some interesting societal commentary there, and I had a blast at the theater with that movie, and I've actually thought about it a lot after I watched it. But Weapons felt like it really grew on that. There's societal commentary laden throughout that film, but that almost felt like Paul Thomas Anderson making a horror movie. Like there was so much reliance on character building, and he just did such an amazing job through the screenplay of that film, really giving us an idea of where all these different characters were at mentally, so their experience could be played out in a way that I felt was very visceral. I really loved the drama of that film, but I also felt the comedy worked in a way that was incredibly effective. And so he has made two really great films, and I'd be interested to see if there are younger filmmakers that sort of pull influence from him. And I definitely think he has a lot of potential to continue to create very effective horror in his career. I think his next project that he is attached to is a Resident Evil reboot, which I think in his hands would actually be incredibly exciting, especially in Barbarian with some of the more like CGI creature effects. All of his practical stuff in these movies has been really great with the violence. And so I'd be really interested to see how that plays out. But he's very exciting, and I really enjoy his work. Up next is Oz Perkins. I really enjoy Oz's work. I've not seen every film that he has made, but I've watched a majority of them. I am an enormous proponent for Legs. I think it's one of the best films of the decade. A lot of people really complain about the supernatural way that the film ends, and I think that's kind of silly because in the existence of that world, I don't think everything necessarily needs to be grounded in some semblance of reality. It is a horror movie, and so I think kind of taking it in the direction of like, Longlegs' character being a devil worshiper and essentially him just accomplishing this task for Satan, I appreciated that. But more than anything, it has amazing performances. It has some of the best setting and cinematography of any horror film in the past decade. I really think that he just does an amazing job creating that ambiance, and it's a movie that I have not stopped thinking about since I watched it. If you look early in his career, I loved The Black Coat's Daughter. I think that's a much more slow burn, effective look into Satanism, funny enough, or not really Satanism, but devil worship and all of those things. Really well done, much more slow burn. There is some violent elements to it, but it's very much performance driven, which I think Oz really gets great performances from his actors. I also loved Gretel and Hansel. I thought that movie was very underrated. People really talked shit about it when it came out. And stylistically, cinematographically, I thought it was great. And I really thought that it was a powerful story from the perspective of this young woman and the expectations that were placed upon her, and kind of how her whole situation has to shift over time. And they really build her character well. And I loved that a lot. I was not a huge fan of the monkey. You know, a lot of people enjoyed it. I thought it didn't really know what it wanted to be. I feel like anytime it sort of pushed itself into schlock territory, it never really went far enough. The humor didn't really work for me. I thought the performances were kind of questionable, and it seems like I like Oz a lot more when he leans into the serious side. Long Legs definitely has some moments that have a lighter tone. I mean, it's still a heavy, disgusting, dramatic movie, but like, I like him when he kind of goes for it completely. And I think his newest movie looks like it's going to align a lot more with Long Legs than it did The Monkey. I think he has a very clear sense of style and how he wants his films to be presented, which is why I think he is very talented. I really look forward to what he's going to make in the future. I think stylistically speaking, I could see a lot of horror filmmakers kind of pulling from the way that he creates tone, because I feel like he does such an amazing job building dread just through the visuals and the way that he utilizes score in his films. And he's incredibly talented. I really enjoy his movies. He's definitely not the favorite on this cube, but I really like his stuff a lot, and I look forward to what he's going to do in the future. Up next on this list is Jordan Peele, another director that I very much love. I personally think Jordan is 3 for 3 in his filmography thus far. I do think Us is the weakest of the three, but I see a lot of people kind of going back and trying to tear apart Get Out, like, oh, it wasn't as good as people said that it was. And it is that good. It is very well made. I think the societal commentary is absolutely incredible. I think it has some of the best performances in a horror movie that I've seen in like the past 20 years. I think the way information revealed to you as a viewer is excellent. I think Jordan Peele does an amazing job with, as a director, creating this sense of unease for you as a viewer, where you're put into situations that you don't know whether to be scared or laugh or feel uncomfortable. And I've said this multiple times, I love that when directors can make me feel a wide array of emotions, and Jordan Peele is very, very good at that. And this movie was incredibly important for a multitude of reasons at the time it came out, but I still love Get Out. I think Us feels like an elongated Twilight Zone episode, and I say that in a very positive way. I'm a big fan of the Twilight Zone. It's definitely the one of his 3 films that I feel like I think about the least, but when I revisit it, I still really love it. Great performances. Honestly, the Lupita Nyong'o performance in that movie is one of my favorite performances in any of the 3 of Jordan Peele's movies. Like the fact that she is playing 2 characters and they're so distinctly different, she really feels like 2 entirely different people, is very impressive. The supporting cast in that movie's great. I love the score to that film, and I think it has a really fun third act, just a really entertaining experience. And I think Peele accomplished exactly what he set out to. I just don't think it really lives up to Get Out or his most recent film, which is Nope, which I think is his Steven Spielberg moment. That movie is remarkable in every sense of the word. I feel like a lot of people's tepid reaction to that film is incredibly unwarranted. That movie does such an amazing job building mystery. It does so much about its character development, which is what I love about Peele. He knows how to write great characters, and he really dives in and creates these worlds that you do not want to leave. That was one of my favorite worlds that he has built thus far. I really love the direction that it goes into. Him having a comedic background, I feel like that movie really does a great job balancing comedy and horror. There's one of the most horrific scenes that I've seen in any one of Jordan Peele's movies in Nope, which I won't go into detail if you haven't seen the movie, but it's really fantastic. I love Jordan Peele as a director. I feel like he's already incredibly influential. I could see his work being sort of referenced multiple times in the future. I've already seen people make films that are sort of in the realm of Get Out, and there's a lot of things stylistically to the way people approach movies that are very similar to Jordan Peele. I definitely think he belongs on the list of a master of modern horror. He's one of my favorite current working directors, and I really look forward to his project in the future. I can't wait to see what he has in store. And the last one on this block is Robert Eggers. I probably don't need to go into too much detail if you guys know me, because if you know me, I have 2 Robert Eggers tattoos on my arm. I'm a huge fan of Robert Eggers. I think Robert Eggers isn't just the master of modern horror, but I think he is one of the greatest working directors right now. This is probably the closest we'll get to a modern day Stanley Kubrick. Yorgos Lanthimos sort of goes in the same direction. I feel like he is such a master of his craft, mostly because of his very intense attention to detail when it comes to making things period accurate. Any movie that he tries to accomplish, whether it be the dialect, the clothing, the way that it's shot, the setting, the atmosphere, he cares very deeply that each and every individual detail is conveyed in a way that is accurately representative to the time period of the film that he is making. And that really just showcases what a special talent that he is. I love that each and every one of his films has a very distinct look to it. You can always feel that it's an Eggers movie, but I think about even his shift from The Witch into The Lighthouse, where The Witch, beautifully shot movie, looks incredible, but The Lighthouse, filming with this older camera equipment, shooting in black and white, really capturing it in that time period essence. Just the meticulousness of the presentation of the material is one of the things that I love about Eggers. Also, the performances that he gets from his actors are bar none some of the best, period, in any movie. I can go through all of them. Anya Taylor-Joy's in The Witch is one of the most memorable performances I've seen in years. Dafoe should have won an Oscar for The Lighthouse. That's one of the best performances I've ever seen, period. Skarsgård in The Northman is phenomenal. I feel like that's one of the most understated performances in Eggers' entire filmography. And Lily Rose Depp was remarkable in Nosferatu. I cannot believe that did not get any awards nominations. It was one of the best performances of the year. And not only is Eggers creating these incredible horror period pieces that are genuinely scary, oftentimes very unsettling and visceral, but he's also writing great characters that are just interesting to watch on screen. I love everything about his movies. I think all 4 of his films are perfect. I have no complaints with any of them. I think he is going to go down as one of the most influential modern directors working, because he's incapable of making anything bad. I'm just convinced that he is not capable of creating a bad movie, and I cannot wait to see more from him. So now that we've gotten that box out of the way, I'm going to kind of go through relatively quickly and talk about some directors that I feel like weren't listed on here that I think should also be incorporated at least into the conversation of not masters of horror, but people that are definitely going to be trailblazers that I think are really going to impact the genre in a way that's meaningful. First up, and he was left off this list, but Ari Aster. I love Ari Aster, and I understand that his previous 2 films might not necessarily be considered horror, even though I think both of them have real life sort of horrific experiences that they showcase, whether it's Beau's debilitating anxiety and his familial trauma and Beau is Afraid, or whether it's the real life horrors of the pandemic of Eddington. I think regardless of how you feel like of the shift that he's taken in his career, denying him that sort of trailblazing thing with Hereditary and Midsummer, where he really was at the forefront with guys like Eggers about kind of cementing what we see in modern horror films. He is very much an incredibly capable, fantastically talented director who gets the most out of his actors, no matter what you say, subject matter wise, about the material that he's putting out in his films. To deny that he is talented at what he does would just be a silly comment, and I think he should be incorporated on this list. Up next is Jane Schoenbrunn. Their 2 movies were All Going to the World's Fair and I Saw the TV Glow. While not necessarily straightforward horror in a conventional sense that a lot of people would say, oh, that's not really a horror movie, they're depicting real life horror and utilizing these really sort of over the top concepts to convey horrific events. I Saw the TV Glow is one of my favorite films of the decade so far, and I feel like the way that it showcases the trans experience and trans individuals not embracing their identity and living life with that as a secret part of themselves, the way that it sort of showcases the horror through certain visuals and the way that the character reacts to situations, it's just very, very well done. We're All Going to the World's Fair is mostly through the perspective of a young person that is pouring themselves into the internet due to their isolation, depression, loneliness, all of these other things that they're going through and experiencing. It's much more analog horror, and it's done in a way that's very moving and incredibly unsettling. And Jane is just brilliant at capturing atmosphere, building suspense and tension, getting incredible performances out of their actors. Just another perfect example of someone who I think is going to make waves in the horror genre over the next several years. Up next is Cori Farot, who directed The Substance and Revenge, two movies that I absolutely love. The Substance diving much more into body horror, the Revenge being a rape revenge film. Both horror or horror adjacent films that are remarkably well shot, that get incredible performances from their actors. Obviously, The Substance got some Academy Awards nominations, which it very much should have. It was an incredible piece of body horror that also was a phenomenal commentary on the Hollywood industry and the treatment of aging Hollywood actors, specifically women. I thought that it was really well done, and I feel like the way Coralie sort of blends societal commentary with horror is what makes her such an incredibly special talent. Obviously, 2 films in, but I can really see her being a trailblazer in the horror genre if that's the genre that she continues to create films in, and I cannot wait to see what she makes next. Another director I'm surprised would not be kind of incorporated in this would be Tai West, obviously with the X trilogy with X, Pearl, and Maxine. I know a lot of people didn't love Maxine. I thought that it was absolutely hilarious and fun and suspenseful and really sort of captured the essence of the time period that it was trying to reflect. But I loved that trilogy. But what I love so much about Tai West is a lot of his earlier work, like The Innkeepers and House of the Devil, which are much slower paced films, focus on really building atmosphere and kind of making you as a viewer feel incredibly uncertain. I think that he is just incredibly talented at what he does, and another director that I could see easily being on this list. Up next is Brandon Croninberg. Both of his movies have body horror elements to them. He kind of dives a little bit more into science fiction with Possessor, but I would say very much horror adjacent. He is just one of my favorite directors working right now, period. I love both of his movies. And similar to what I've said about a lot of these other directors, I feel like he does such a great job creating these visceral experiences that make you feel incredibly uncomfortable and sick at the things that you're watching. Just a really talented director that I look forward to more from in the future. I've discussed that their newest movie is one of my favorites of the year so far, but the Philipp Brothers that just directed Bring Her Back, also directed Talk to Me. They are creating some of the most disturbing, unsettling horror that's paralleled to real life experience. They obviously utilize the supernatural elements to inflate what they're doing, but I feel like the real world trauma that they're exploring comes across in a way that is incredibly believable. Their films are very well shot. They get phenomenal performances from their actors. Just another group that 2 films in, but I feel like could really make waves in the horror genre. Another one on that list would be Julia Ducournau, who's made 2 films I've really loved, Titan and Raw, that are both body horror adjacent in 2 very different ways. Raw makes me sick thinking about because it's a cannibal movie. I struggle with cannibal films, but it's absolutely incredible. Titan, very disturbing, unsettling body horror that also is surprisingly beautiful at its core, with a relationship that it unravels later on in the film. But very competent director who gets incredible performances from her actors. The cinematography in her films are beautiful. I feel like the way that it sort of just thrusts you into these worlds and how you just have to kind of deal with the really unsettling, disturbing things that you're witnessing on screen. Just really incredible stuff. I love both of these movies, and I really look forward to more from her in the future. And then last up on this list, probably one of my favorite modern horror filmmakers next to Robert Eggers is Mr. Mike Flanigan. I love Mike's work. I think he is truly one of the most talented directors working today, not just for his filmography, but also for the long-form television shows that he's put out on Netflix. He just knows how to create worlds that you never want to leave, with characters that you fall in love with immediately, or if you don't, you find them incredibly interesting. I could go through his entire filmography and analyze each and every one of his movies and projects, how much I love each and every one of them. But Mike is someone who is so good for the horror community, not just because of the material he's making, but all the material that he supports. You can feel his influence in a lot of modern day horror, especially with a lot of younger filmmakers that are doing early works in their catalog. You can see Mike's influence in droves in a lot of films. I think he is a trailblazer of modern horror. I think he is one of the best to do it, and I always look forward to new projects from Mike. So what do you think about the people on these lists or directors that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. I'm always excited to talk about this subject. Obviously, I love horror, and so it's one of my favorite things to discuss. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material. Look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.